everyone, I'm Lori Kirkstead, and this is The Imposter's Guide to Authentic Leadership, a podcast for new leaders who are ready to stop depending on external approval and start trusting themselves. This series is based on my book of the same name, so if anything you hear speaks to you and you want to go a little deeper, that's where to go next for more context and to do the leadership activity prompts. This podcast is for people who got promoted because they were great at their jobs and then realized that leadership felt less like an accomplishment and more like starting over. And in the last episode, we talked about the second dimension of authentic leadership, according to Dr. Bill George, and that was values. Specifically, the gap between knowing what you believe and actually acting on it when the moment gets uncomfortable, which is a lot harder to do than it is to say. Now today, we're on to the third dimension, and that's heart. And I will warn you up front, this is the one that people pleasers are almost always convinced they've already got it figured out. And that confidence is exactly where the trouble starts. So Dr. Bill George talks about heart as the capacity to turn attention into connection. And the way he frames it makes it clear that the test isn't how a leader shows up when things are comfortable. Let's just put it flat out on the table here. This is not about how things are going when things are good. It's what they do when things aren't. When they stay engaged when a conversation gets harder instead of easier, or what they do in the moment right before they speak, or when someone in front of them is struggling, those are the choices that determine whether people feel safe enough around you to tell you the truth. And heart, the way he means it, in my interpretation, is not warmth as a personality trait or patience as a management skill. It's the willingness to stay in the room when leaving would be easier, and to care enough about someone's actual growth that you let them feel what they're feeling instead of taking it away from them and carrying it yourself. Purpose is what you're here to do. Values are what make you actually do it, even when it costs you. Heart is something different yet again, because heart is what tells you whether your presence in a room is, let's just say, real or managed. Let's call it out. You can have a clear purpose and strong values and still walk into a conversation performing care instead of actually offering it. And everyone's had a manager do this to them at one point in their career. And the person across from you can feel that difference, even if they don't say it out loud. So that's what makes heart easy to fake, because it looks like kindness from the outside, but it doesn't actually help. When I first read George's definition, my reaction was initially relief, because of all the 5 dimensions, heart felt like the one I'd been already living. I led with warmth and I paid close attention to people. I noticed when someone was struggling and I really tried my best to show up for them. But what I had to reckon with eventually was what I thought was heart was often something closer to emotional management. My own as much as anyone else's, really. Like I was present, but I was present the way someone is present when part of them is also scanning for the moment things might go sideways. And I think that's fundamentally different than actually being there. You know how you can be somewhere and not actually be there? That's what I'm talking about. Now, in my early leadership roles, I truly believed that being approachable meant leaving the door open for anything. And I mean anything. People came to me when they were frustrated or when they had a small thing that blew up into a big thing, because I listened. And I want to restate this. I genuinely care about people. But my calendar slowly filled with conversations that looked like check-ins, but functioned more like unofficial therapy sessions. For a while, I wore that like a badge of honor because people trusted me enough to be open, and I know they didn't trust other people. And that felt like the kind of leader I always wanted to be. But what I didn't understand yet was how easily that kind of openness, without any real direction or boundaries, turns into something that drains everyone, including the person you're trying to help. Some of those conversations were productive. You talked someone through something and they left with more clarity, but plenty of others drifted into long loops of just venting that left us both depleted, like it wasn't constructive at all. Someone would come in frustrated, I'd listen and nod and offer some reassurance and, maybe crack a joke at the right moment to take the edge off. I'm sure they'd leave feeling lighter, but I sat there holding whatever they brought in, unable to put it down like that was my problem now and I had to fix it because I didn't want anyone to feel bad. Saying that out loud sounds crazy, but that's how I felt inside. I stayed in those moments far longer than I needed to, because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. Really, the pattern became impossible to ignore once I noticed the same conversations happening on repeat with the same person on my team. They'd arrive frustrated, we'd talk through it, they'd feel better, and 2 weeks later they'd come back with a version of the exact same frustration. Nothing was changing. I wasn't actually helping them solve anything. I was giving them, I guess, somewhere to put it, but it wasn't actually fixing anything. I look at it like I was the release valve, which meant the pressure never built up enough force for a real reckoning, or whatever you want to call it, to address what was actually going on underneath, like a tea kettle that almost got to be boiling so you never really heard the whistle because I never let it go off. That release valve, it costs you something specific, and it's not just about the one person bringing you the same frustration over and over. I think there's a particular kind of tiredness that comes from absorbing instead of staying present. It's different from working hard or being busy. And I know a lot of empathetic people can relate to this. It shows up after a conversation where you didn't technically do anything except hold space, I guess. And somehow you still feel wrung out by it because your body doesn't actually know the difference between the weight you choose to carry and the weight you picked up by accident. I guess it just registers heavy either way. And for a long time, I looked at that exhaustion as proof that I had done my job well. That if I felt drained, I must have really shown up for someone, right? My first instinct, once I saw that pattern clearly, was shame. I had believed so completely that I was doing the right thing, and now I had to sit with the possibility that my open door, one of the things I had been proudest of, had sometimes been more about my needs than what people needed from me. Letting someone vent endlessly without ever redirecting them towards something more useful is not kindness. This is not a bitch session with your friends. You're supposed to be someone's manager. It's choosing the version of care that keeps people liking you over the version that actually helps them grow, and that's the disservice. Seeing people clearly, which again, I think that's my purpose, isn't the same thing as making them feel heard in the moment. It means caring enough to help them move forward, even when moving forward means sitting in something uncomfortable instead of releasing it. Leading with heart, I eventually learned, does not mean being less compassionate. It truly means trusting the connection can survive even when I stop being the emotional shock absorber for everyone around me. That I can care about someone without taking their feelings as my own assignment to manage. It really didn't make me a colder leader. If anything, it made my presence more honest because people could bring their whole selves into a conversation while also being trusted to find their own footing instead of leaning on me to hold all the weight. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I'm so glad that I did. All right, in the next episode, we are on to the fourth dimension, and that's relationships. Specifically, why people pleasers are usually very well liked, and why being well liked is not the same thing as being trusted, and why that gap tends to show up at the worst possible moments. This podcast is just a peek at the book, which has the full framework by Dr. Bill George and the exercises that go with it. You can find more information about where to buy it in the show notes, and if you know a new leader who needs to hear this, please send it their way. It really does help get the word out. All right, that is it for episode 8. As always, I am so glad you're here. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.